Shevuot, Daf Kaftet Amud Aleph, Perspectives and Truth, Shevuot Shav ושקר. There's a well-known quote attributed to Marcus Aurelius that everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Each person, you have a way of looking at the world, it's only a small piece. And that's become quite a popular justification for moral relativism, that nobody knows the truth. Everybody just has an opinion. Your opinion's no better than my opinion. Rav Gibli, you were just talking about the importance of having a Rebbe. The Rambam has this view, well, I have a different view. It's his perspective, it's my perspective. They're equally valid. And I was very happy to discover that Marcus Aurelius never said that. That it's a complete fake quote that's become totally accepted and recognized. He said something much smarter and much more nuanced. What he said was the universe is change and life is an opinion, or is a mere opinion. Because in a lifetime you only get a slice of a whole evolving and changing universe. How can it be anything more than an opinion? But let's understand the role of perspective in halakha. How do we treat perspective? The fact is, everybody does have a different perspective. And there is a concept of shivim panim la Torah. The Torah does have many, many different facets. And therefore, truth has different facets. How does one relate to the difference between scientific truth, so to say, and perspectives? And we see that where we learn it from, really, is two different facets of incorrect shvuot, of wrong shvuot, the wrong oaths that we can make. The one is of the Ten Commandments, in the pasuk that we've learned. Lo tisa Hashem lokecha lashav, ki lo yinakeh Hashem et asher yisa et shmo lashav. You can't use Hashem's name lashav. What does shav mean? So Rabbi Yosef Bechosho defines it. There are a number of different definitions in the Mefarshim on the Chumash. Rabbi Yosef Bechosho defines it as davar shelo haya velo nivra. To swear about something that is absurd, it's ridiculous, it never was. That's a shvuat shav. In Vayikra we have a different isur, lo tishavu vishmi lashaker. You mustn't use my name as a lie. So the one is use my name in vain, the way it's translated in English, and the one is to use my name to justify a lie. And a sheker, Rabbi Yosef Bechosho says, davar sheyeshno. Sheker is something which does seem to be, aval eino kein, but it isn't. So that would be a difference almost between a perspective and a truth. I'm telling you something which kind of looks real, but it isn't real. That would be sheker, and we'll understand that in greater depth. Our Mishnah tries to define it more clearly, and we'll see in Rashi and the Rambam's differing understanding of the Mishnah, we'll have two different understandings of perspective and truth. So the Mishnah says, Shvuat shav, what is a shvuat shav? Back in Tav Chav Zayin we said, Chayavin al zdona makot v'al shigigata patur. When you make a shvuat shav, that means again a shvuah that on something that is totally absurd, never existed, then you get makos, you get the lashes if you did it deliberately, and if you didn't do it deliberately, if it was done by mistake, you're potter altogether. There's no korban oile v'yored in the case of a shvuah shav. Korban oile v'yored, you remember, is this variable korban specifically for a person who makes a shvuah and then breaks a shvuah unwittingly. But in the case of a shvuat shav, if you make a shvuah that has no basis to it whatever, there isn't malchut for that, for various reasons. What is a shvuat shav? Our Mishnah deals with that. Ezohu shvuat shav. What do we mean by a shvuat shav? A shvuat sheker I understand. I say something which is untrue and I swear by God's name to that untrue statement. That's a shvuat bitui. I've expressed myself in a way which is untrue. That's the classical case of a shvuat sheker. But what is a shvuat shav? Nishba l'shanot et hayadua la'adam. A person makes an oath denying that which everybody knows. That's a shvuat shav. For example, Amar al ha'amud shel even shuhu shel zahav. You're standing outside the Acropolis in Athens and you're looking at these magnificent columns and you say, they're made from gold. I swear they're made from gold. Well, everybody knows that's nonsense. That's a shvuat shav. V'ala ishahu isha. Or if one says about a man that he's a woman. In those days, everybody knew that was nonsense. V'ala isha shehi ish, or a woman that's a man. And it's interesting how the Mishnah gives that as one of the cases of the most obvious and clear differences. That shows the level of insanity that our society has got to, that we don't have clarity on certain things, that where there are gray areas, but in this there are no gray areas. Leaving aside the very unusual physiological cases the Torah itself deals with, but in 99% of them, more than that of the cases, an ish is an ish, an isha is an isha, and it's obvious to everybody. Nishbal davar she'i efshar lo, you make an oath to do something which is clearly impossible. Or im lo ra'iti gamal sheporach ba'ir v'im lo ra'iti nachash kekorach ba'beit, just something which is fantastical. But we're going to focus on this pillar, which is of stone, and he says it's gold. Amar Ula in the Gemara puts a condition onto this. When is it a Shvuat Shav? V'hu shenikar l'shlosha b'nei Adam. You need to be sure that there are at least 3 people who know that this is stone. If it's not so clear that it's stone, if it looks like gold, and some people are not sure, you say, what is this pillar made from? People say, I don't know. I can't tell. Then this doesn't apply. A Shvuat Shav is only if we have 3 people. That means that's established as a chazokah. If we do a survey and we find 3 random people, also, of course, this is made from stone. What are these columns of the Acropolis made from? They're made from stone, clearly. 3 people know that, then we can assume that everybody knows that. If everybody knows that and he says it's made from gold, then that's a Shvuat Shav. Adds Rashi, V'hu shenikar ha'amud l'shlosha b'nei Adam hu dahavishav. Only then is it a shvua. And what happens if there aren't 3 people who know? What happens if this, you can't really tell, it's painted gold, that people aren't really sure what it's made from. Then what is it? Avalonikar, if people aren't sure. The truth is it's made of stone. People aren't sure what it's made from. And he swears it's made of gold. That's a shvuat sheker. Says Rashi, that's not a shvuat shav, that's a shvuat sheker. Why? Explains the Torah's Chaim. I've introduced the Torah's Chaim to you before. This wonderful parish on several Masechtas, and Shavuos is one of them. The Torah's Chaim is really important because of when he lived and who he was. So he's a Talmud of the Mahashor, and his father is a Talmud of the Ramah. The Shulchan Aruch is always your indicator as to where a particular individual fits in terms of Rishonim and Acharonim. Because up until the time of the Shulchan Aruch, we consider the Mefarshim of the Gemara to be Rishonim, part of that medieval period with enormous authority. Then comes the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo and the Ramah, and from then onwards we're looking at Acharonim. The Torah's Chaim's father was a Talmud of the Ramah, so he's one generation after the Shulchan Aruch. So he's a very early Achron, and therefore he's got a lot of authority. So he explains, all these examples are important. Even though we're talking about a pillar which is painted gold, so if you can't get up close to it, you're not sure, but it looks like a golden pillar. Nevertheless, even though it could be gold, it looks like it's gold, but if more than 3 people know that this is not gold, it's made from stone, we don't assume that he made a mistake. And he actually thought, the person making the shvua thought it was gold. Since everybody seems to know that it's not made of gold, we assume he also knew that it wasn't made of gold. And therefore, to shvua shav, v'lekach nakata Allah amud shel even, v'lo ktani amar al even shu zahav. Therefore, it says the Torah's Chaim, that's why the Mishnah says we're talking about a column of stone that he says is made from gold, because columns, he says, mishum de'urchu l'tzayer al amud, because the interior decorators used to paint the columns, and they didn't always look as they were. They sometimes had a veneer of gold, or they might have been gold plated. They might have actually put a gold surface over the top of it, but it's made from stone. That's what we're talking about, an amud, not just a block of stone that he says it's gold. So if we understand Rashi as the Torah's Chaim explains Rashi, then a shvuat shav is when you say something nonsensical. It's not sheker. Even though scientifically it's sheker, it's a lie. This is a column, it's made of stone, and he swore that it's made of gold. Isn't that a lie? No, says Rashi, that's not called a shvuat sheker, because he's not misleading anybody. Sheker is when you mislead somebody. When it's obvious nonsense, it's not sheker, it's shav. There's a difference between sheker and shav. Sheker is something you say, oh really? I didn't know. You've told me something I didn't know, and it's wrong. That's sheker. You've misled an ignorant person into a false conclusion. That's sheker. But if I know that you're talking nonsense, that's no longer sheker, it's called shav. It's still forbidden to use Hashem's name and make a shvuah. Not because you're misleading people, not because it's dishonest. It's because you're trivializing the Rebbeinu Shalom's name. You're using the Rebbeinu Shalom's name for nonsense. And that we're not allowed to do. That's the meaning. That's how, according to Rashi, we understand this Isur in the Ten Commandments and the Torah of not taking God's name in vain. That means certainly not using it l'sheker, which we see later on in Parshas Kedoshim, but even just using it l'shav, even saying something which isn't misleading anybody because everybody knows it's false, even that is not allowed. Why? Not because it's false, but because it's shav, because it's nonsense. And that links into the Bechor Shor's definition of shav. Davar shelo haya velo nivra. Something which is absurd because it never was. Everybody knows it never was. And it's very interesting. Part of the reason that I brought the Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shor is because the Torah's Chaim is Rabbi Avram Chaim Shor. And he is a descendant of Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shor, part of the same family. So sheker is something misleading, shav is something nonsensical. Now if we look at the Rambam learns it differently. Says the Rambam, and the Rambam is fascinating and leads us into a new understanding of perspective and truth. Davar yadua etzel hachachamim ba'alei seichel u'mada. It's well known among wise people who have knowledge and intellect. She'hashemesh gedola min haaretz 170 pa'amim. That the sun is 170 times the size of the earth. Nishba echad min ha'am she'hashemesh gedola min haaretz. So now somebody comes and swears that the sun is bigger than the earth. That's a scientific fact. It's true. Anything wrong with that? Well, maybe it's a shvuat shav. Well, according to Rashi, so is it nonsense? No, it's not nonsense. Is it a lie? It isn't a lie. So it isn't a shvuat shav. Says the Rambam also, Eino lokeh mishum shvuat shav. It's not a shvuat shav. She'afa pi sha'adavar keinhu, even though this is so, ein davar ze galui v'yadua l'chol ha'am. The Rambam differentiates with something which is kain and something which is galui v'yadua. Kain means it's scientifically valid. It's empirically true. Galui v'yadua means everybody knows it's true. There's a difference. Something which is kain means it's not obvious, but it's true. Galui v'yadua means it's obvious. Since the sun's size relative to the earth is not obvious, what he said, he's told somebody something they didn't know, or they might not have known. So it's not a shvuat shav. So you see from the Rambam, a shvuat shav is an unnecessary shvuah. If we could see the sun was bigger than the earth, it was obvious that the sun was bigger than the earth, then this would be a shvuat shav. This would be an unnecessary shvuah. Not because it's nonsensical, but because it's unnecessary. So the Rambam notches down what a shvuat shav means. According to Rashi, a shvuat shav is only if you say something which is nonsensical and false. Everybody knows it's false. But if you say something which is obvious and true, that's not even a shvuat shav. It's just nothing according to Rashi. But according to the Rambam, that is a shvuat shav. So why, if somebody swears that the sun is bigger than the earth, is that not a shvuat shav? Because no, it's not obvious to everybody. It's a scientific fact, but it's not obvious. Only to educated people know that fact. Not everybody knows that. What Ula comes to teach us is that something which any three people know to be true, because it's obvious and clear. Misharam kegon ish hu ish. A man swears about a man that is a man. Ve'even shu even, about a stone that it's a stone. Notice the Rambam does not say amud even. He does not use the Mishnah's language. He says, even, there's a rock. And the person says, I swear to you that this is a rock. Says the Rambam, that's a shvuat shav. Says Rashi, that's nothing. The Rambam says, that's a shvuat shav because it's unnecessary. What would happen if somebody makes an oath, the sun is smaller than the earth? Scientifically untrue. Says the Rambam, it's not over. That's not a shvuat shav. And it's not a shvuat sheker. But it's untrue. Says the Rambam, yes, it's not kain, it's not true. But it's not obvious. ואינו כמי שנשבע על האיש אישה, שהרי לא נשבע אלא על ראיית עיניו, שהרי הוא רואה אותה קטנה. He's making an oath about his perception. He's saying, the way I see it, the sun appears smaller than the earth. That's a valid statement. So what the Rambam is saying is not like in the title, the piece attributed to Marcus Aurelius. It's not that everything you see is just an opinion. No, there are things which are facts, and there are things which are perspectives. And sometimes the perspective reflects the facts, and sometimes the perspective doesn't reflect the fact. And to express something as a perspective, or even if you express it as a reality, what's the words this man makes? He makes a shvuah, the sun is bigger than the earth. So what would we say? But scientifically that's not true, therefore that's a sheker, that's a lie. No, it's not a lie, because I'm talking about a perspective. So the Rambam gives a space for perspectives. He doesn't confuse perspectives with truth. There's still such a thing as a davar shekenu, something which is true, and something which is galu v'yadua. You can have something which is true, but it's not galu v'yadua. It's true, but people have different perspectives because they can't see the whole thing. They can't see it accurately. And therefore the Rambam says shav is something which is obvious and unnecessary. This rock is a stone, that's a shvuat shav. According to Rashi, that's nothing. I want to swear that a stone is a stone, it's not, that's nothing. But to swear something which is obviously wrong, everybody knows it's untrue, that's not sheker, because everybody knows it's untrue. So according to Rashi, it's only a lie, it's only sheker if you're misleading somebody. But if you're not misleading somebody, it's called a shvuat shav. And according to the Rambam, sheker is something which is contrary both to perception and to reality and to fact. If it's valid in perception but not in fact, or it's valid in fact but not in perception, that's neither a shvuat shav nor a shvuat sheker. It's only called a lie when it doesn't correlate with people's perceptions nor with scientific fact. Then it's a shvuat sheker. It's so interesting to see how, in what nuanced and detailed way, Chazal go into the question of the differentiation between shav and sheker and the need to separate between shav and sheker, the fact that there is an objective reality and there is a perception. There are times when they align and there are times when they don't align. And when they don't align, a perception has some meaning and some validity as well. And somebody who swears according to their perception, even though it's not true according to scientific fact, is neither a shvuat shav nor even is a shvuat sheker.